Hello, it's an honor to be here. I'm delighted to be a part of this really important discussion. And yes, it's a pleasure to meet Maria Jose after many years of simply corresponding. I'm trained as an architect, and I run the leading independent architect selection firm in the United States. We're called Dovetail Design Strategists. And our work covers many sectors. We do institutional work, cultural work, educational, commercial, and civic. And we run the design team selection for a broad range of clients, and this can take many forms. It can be an RFQ, an RFP, an interview process, design concept commissions, and very frequently, design competitions. So much of our design competition work has revolved around projects involving public space. And the main reason I do what I do is that I really believe that the built environment we live in is one of the most important factors influencing our quality of life. The added value of design excellence cannot really be measured. I see it as a necessity, and running Dovetail's my way of contributing to moving design excellence forward. And what better forum for design excellence than public space? We've seen numerous fabulous projects today that were the results of design competitions. So perhaps I'm preaching to an already converted crowd, but design competitions are a really fantastic way to promote design excellence. They bring issues to the forefront, they make complex design problems accessible to the public, and they are a fantastic way to create dialogue around a project. And we like to think that our design competitions provide a clear outline of a problem. We tell our clients if you ask the right questions, you're more likely to get the right answers. Competition can serve as a broad laboratory for exploration, and it's an avenue to push the boundaries of creativity by bringing fresh thinking to a problem. So Dovetail created and led, on behalf of the City of New York, two very different design competitions that address two very different aspects of construction site safety and aesthetics. The first was the Urban Shed International Design Competition, and the second was the Urban Canvas Design Competition. Both competitions succeeded in different ways. Urban Shed, I think most importantly, by bringing attention to the issue and moving the conversation around sidewalk sheds in Manhattan further, and Urban Canvas by dotting the 5 boroughs of New York City with artwork and beautifying a wide array of diverse construction sites. The Urban Shed competition focused on the pressing need for reimagining the design and safety of, I think there are now 8,000 sidewalk sheds. Howard actually just told me that in the last 2 years, there was 6,000 sidewalk sheds in New York 2 years ago, and now it's 8,000. And they dot the streetscape all over. This is due to actually a law we have called Local Law 11, which requires building owners to put up sidewalk sheds if there's any threat of anything falling off their building. But very frequently they'll go up and the problem is not addressed, but the sidewalk shed stays up forever. And in fact, the DOB, the New York City Department of Buildings, has actually had a sidewalk shed now up for, I think, 5 years. So these 8,000 sheds, if you place them back to back, this would create a linear walk from New York City all the way to Baltimore, which is a pretty long walk. Until we actually did the design competition, no one had revisited the design since, I think, the 1950s. So much like Andrew, I'm going to show you the sad and sorry state of these sidewalk sheds. Very frequently you will see this blue electric tape wrapped around them, not so frequently with the garbage in them, but that's because the nuts and bolts used to join them have sharp edges and people will rip their clothing on them, so why not just fix it with some electrical tape? And there's these bases which are shimmied by wood shims, and incredibly ad hoc considering the rules and regulations that they're supposed to be meeting. So the Urban Shed competition challenged architects, engineers, designers, and students to find the most innovative, cutting-edge design solution to the problems presented by sidewalk sheds in New York. The Urban Shed competition not only resulted in the selection of a winning design, but also served as a catalyst for New York City and many other cities to begin to rethink the form and function of sidewalk sheds. Here you see the winning design, and this is a prototype. It was called Urban Umbrella, and it was erected at 100 Broadway, downtown Manhattan, in December 2011. And the designers for it were Youngwon Choi, Andres Cortez, and Sarah Kahn. It's composed of recycled steel, translucent plastic panels, and LED lighting. And in addition to bringing a much better aesthetic, it's much more sustainable. It has increased visibility at night, allows more pedestrian traffic. There's no cross breaking. You can actually move different ways across the street you couldn't before. And after the competition, it also underwent months and months of testing for resistance to the forces associated with falling debris, vehicle accidents, and strong winds. The competition Urban Canvas challenged artists and designers to create printed artwork for temporary protective structures at construction sites. So it was for construction fences, sidewalk sheds, scaffolding, and cocoons. And within months following the competition, which was completed in 2012, the winning schemes have been dotted around all 5 boroughs of New York City. And this was actually very exciting for us, that it wasn't Manhattan-centric. This is actually in Atlantic Yards, on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, where, in fact, I think you're going to hear a talk about the project that is happening there soon. The next one is on the Upper East Side. This was Hunter College put one of our winning schemes in. This is in Brooklyn again, and this is in Manhattan, right down by the World Trade Center site, the Memorial. So both competitions were very complex in their own ways, and I might note that both of them, unlike the competitions that we've seen today, were not site-specific. They were intended to come up with winning designs that were prototypes that could be used on a vast diversity of sites. So both were complex in their own ways, both from the point of view of the problem that was posed to architects, artists, and designers, and complex in the politics and economics of making these construction site improvements a reality. So the 3 major challenges were the same, but in different degrees for each competition facing us were political, physical, and economic. So for the political, both competitions required the incorporation of multiple stakeholders with varied agendas in order to smooth the way for implementation. Both had multiple players, but Urban Shed, as you can see, had significantly more funders and many more heavily invested parties. For instance, the Department of Transportation, the commissioner was actually on our jury. They have jurisdiction over sidewalks, which I didn't know until I began the project. And they were absolutely vigilant that you could not stick anything into the sidewalk. So nothing could be drilled into it. It had to be removed. No one was supposed to know that it was there. And they took this very, very seriously. Another example is that in New York, there's a very strong hoisting and scaffolding association. They're a well-established industry group, and they represent hoisting and scaffolding vendors. And so we incorporated, when we structured the competition, we put together a technical advisory group, and one of our major players was the president of the Hoisting and Scaffolding Association, who was very suspicious at the beginning, but then contributed enormously to the competition. He was really our leading authority on installation and deinstallation issues, labor issues, and so on, and he grew to love the project. I think the big issue for Urban Canvas were not so much political, but ease of implementation and the quality and consistency of the artwork on various different types of construction protective surfaces. I guess with Urban Canvas, some of the political issues were really regulatory, dealing with signage laws. Advertising is not currently allowed on construction protective devices. And I think that the city very much saw the Urban Canvas design competition as a way in to start to think about how you could get advertising on there. For the physical, so for Urban Shed, in addition to involving a broader list of decision makers and stakeholders, the physical challenges behind producing, mounting, and maintaining two-dimensional artwork really paled in comparison to the safety, sustainability, constructability issues surrounding sidewalk shed fabrication, installation, and maintenance. The variables, as you can see, affecting the sidewalk shed seem infinite, and we had stringent load and DOB requirements. So sidewalk sheds in New York have to work on narrow sidewalks, average width sidewalks, wide sidewalks. They have to meet modern buildings, low-rise buildings, historic buildings. There's trees you have to deal with. There's enormous variation of slope on the sidewalks. We've all been to New York, and while it's on a grid, it is very higgledy-piggledy. So there were huge requirements that needed to be met. So to address these varying degrees of complexity, the differing number of stakeholders, and the City of New York's aspirations for each competition, Dovetail crafted the structure and format quite differently. And I think it's really interesting to note that for Urban Shed, Mayor Bloomberg's administration felt quite strongly that we should cast as broad a net as possible. So therefore, we crafted an open and international competition, and indeed, we received 164 designs submitted by architects, engineers, designers, and students from 28 countries around the world. Urban Canvas, on the other hand, was only open to professional artists and designers, and only to US citizens. Urban Shed had 2 stages. 3 finalists were given a stipend, and after stage 1, 3 finalists were given a stipend and were required to either have a licensed practicing architect or engineer as part of their team. All 3 finalists were brought to New York to meet with the technical advisory group and selected members of the New York City DOB. Urban Canvas, on the other hand, was a 1-stage, 1-submission contest that had several layers of judging. From over 100 submissions from 17 states, the level of entry was extraordinary, and ultimately the jury selected 8 designs to be approved by the Public Design Commission. And then these 8 were pared down to 4 by an online public vote. And for us, structuring that, it was a lot to think through. Do you have the public vote first and then the Public Design Commission, or do you have the Public Design Commission and then the public vote? So obviously the Public Design Commission first and then the public vote kept everybody a lot happier. All 4 finalists for Urban Canvas were then given monetary awards, and fairly quickly, all 4 designs were selected by developers and building owners, and as well as the MTA, and they're dotted around the city. So part of our role as competition advisors is to put together a fantastic jury, and for both Urban Shed and Urban Canvas, we had spectacular juries. Dovetail's brand is known within the States in the worlds of architecture and design, and part of our brand is this ability to put together fabulous juries. This raises the bar on entries. People want to know who's going to be looking at their work. So for Urban Shed, we had David Childs, Craig Dykers, Adatola, and all 3 commissioners from 3 different agencies. For Urban Canvas, we were incredibly lucky to have the artist Polly Apfelbaum, the terrific young graphic designer Sagi Haviv, and the very well-known graphic designer Paula Scher. 2 challenges facing Urban Canvas were providing consistency of artwork over different protective structures, as well as ease of implementation. So for ease of implementation, the competition required production-ready artwork. This is one of the formats that each piece had to be submitted in. And we organized the 4 different temporary construction site structures into one group, which was called the Artwork Package. Implementation for both Urban Canvas and Urban Shed required navigating New York City's somewhat Byzantine rules and regulations. So both competitions resulted in what were known as pilot projects. And for Urban Canvas, Dovetail collaborated with the New York City Department of Buildings on a corresponding booklet which described for building owners and developers how to go about using the winning artwork. For Urban Shed, the New York City DOB issued a buildings bulletin following upon the competition, which established acceptance criteria for Urban Shed as an alternative sidewalk shed. And this document allows for other designs to be introduced, and Urban Umbrella is considered just the first shed to meet the new design criteria. And in fact, before we started, I think we all knew that in New York City this was going to be an incredibly difficult discussion, and Urban Shed truly opened the discussion. For Dovetail, one of the most exciting results of the Urban Shed design competition was a conversation that began around regulatory issues due to one of the finalists, which was called Urban Cloud. The project proposes sidewalk sheds that are hung in various different ways from buildings rather than supported by structures on the ground. Designed by a young studio, K&E Studio, it's a brilliant idea, but it was way before its time. But this project excited the jury immensely, and it led to many technical discussions within the DOB as to how new buildings might incorporate structural systems to support future urban clouds. As with anything innovative, Urban Umbrella is slightly more expensive than the typical sheds now dotted around the city. New York City can't mandate the use of the sheds in the same way that they installed the bus shelters all around the city, so they can't make building owners or developers use them. The designers do claim that once fabricated and installed in bulk, the cost of Urban Umbrella will go down significantly and be commensurate with the cost of the current sheds. But there's no doubt of the enormous added value of Urban Umbrella. There's sustainable LED lighting, increased natural light on the sidewalk. It has a higher horizontal load to vertical load. There's the elimination of cross bracing, which allows for storefronts to be visible. There's adjustable feet. It's safer, and after all, it's really quite beautiful. So I threw this slide in, which shows you a computer from the 1940s, I believe, which I think took up an entire room and several different people to actually work it, and then a smartphone, just to remind everybody of the billions and billions of dollars, much of it military money, that was put into that sort of technology, which actually enabled us to then have smartphones. And it's very frustrating in a city like New York, where there is so much money, but there's just not a culture. There's an understanding, sort of good design is good business, but it's really difficult to move a culture not used to paying more for something and not really caring about the built environment or the pedestrians to actually use urban umbrella on a regular basis. It was put up in Toronto at Ryerson University, and here I'll just end on an image of urban umbrella, which I think has very, very exciting possibilities. Thank you.